I'm Eric Marcus, and this is Making Gay History. It's January 1980. I'm on winter break from my final semester at Vassar College, and I'm sitting in a darkened Broadway theater watching two exhausted-looking young men carry large rocks back and forth across the stage. They don't touch, don't even look at each other, but they're falling in love. Two gay concentration camp inmates persecuted by the Nazis because of who they are. The play is Bent by Martin Sherman. The setting is Dachau. I don't have to work hard to imagine Dachau. My memories of visiting the former concentration camp during a trip the previous summer are fresh in my mind. But seeing the story of people like me, who are caught in the jaws of the Nazi regime brought to life on stage, with all of its senseless brutality and humiliation, makes my blood run cold and leaves an indelible mark. I wasn't new to the Holocaust. I grew up in Kew Gardens, a New York City neighborhood where many persecuted Jews had settled, refugees from before World War II and survivors of the Holocaust. One of my chores when I was a kid, and first allowed to cross the street on my own, was to buy the Sunday newspapers at a candy store on Metropolitan Avenue. It was run by Ziggy, an old man with an Eastern European accent, who usually gave me a free pretzel to go along with the papers. He had numbers tattooed on his forearm, and when I asked my father about the tattoo, he explained where Ziggy got it. After that, I was on the lookout for other concentration camp tattoos, and I didn't have to look far to find them, on the arms of neighbors and some of my friends' parents, too. By the time I first visited Dachau, I'd been swimming in Holocaust history for years. I'd read about it in history books and the Diary of Anne Frank, and I'd watched the archival newsreels and documentaries that have become standard fare for anyone interested in the subject. But until I saw Bent, I'd been almost entirely unaware of the persecution of homosexuals during the years of the Nazi regime between 1933 and 1945. If history books mentioned it at all, it was usually just an aside. It wasn't until 6 years after I saw the play that the first comprehensive English-language book about the fate of gay people in Nazi Germany was published. It was called The Pink Triangle by Richard Plant, a gay German refugee. And when I began working on my Making Gay History book in 1988, I made a point of interviewing him, even though World War II was outside the scope of my book. But the subject never lost its grip on me, and when we launched the Making Gay History podcast, I had it in the back of my mind that we should one day produce a season about the Nazi era. Because, to this day, the topic remains underexplored and poorly understood, reduced to the visual of an inverted pink triangle on a striped concentration camp uniform. I wanted us to tell in greater depth the story of the men who were persecuted for their homosexuality, and to describe the danger that others across the LGBTQ spectrum, as we currently understand that term, found themselves in after the Nazis came to power. And I also wanted to explore the experiences of queer people who were persecuted for reasons other than their sexuality, as well as those who risked their lives to save others. We sifted through the vast oral history repositories of the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, the USC Shoah Foundation, and the Fortunoff Video Archive, scoured smaller archives at home and abroad, tracked down documentary footage, and after a year of intensive research, we're proud to present our series on the experiences of LGBTQ people during the rise of the Nazi regime, World War II, and the Holocaust. It begins with 2 episodes that draw on recorded and written testimony from multiple people to lay out the historical background. And then we'll share 8 individual profile episodes based on oral histories, some of them voiced by actors in English translation. You'll hear from people like Pierre Seel, a Frenchman persecuted for being gay.
Now,
when I see the scene again, if I have to describe it in detail, the most terrible thing was maybe not the assault itself. It was the blood everywhere. On the papers, the tables, there was blood everywhere, like in a butcher's shop. And the screaming, still the Nazis shouting, and our own cries too. the cries of pain and suffering, because you have people who can suffer in silence, who put their hand in their mouth to keep quiet, accept the suffering. And then there are others, me. I screamed. I screamed as if my throat was being slit.
You'll also hear from Frida Bellinfante, a Dutch lesbian resistance fighter.
For 3 months, I was disguised as a man, and a friend of mine had the same figure, the same height, and I had a 3-piece suit that fit me to a T. And I went out for the first time in my disguise, and I went to get a haircut right away. I went into the barber shop and took my hat off and put it on the hook. And the barber walks up to me and he said, "What do you want, sir? Shave or haircut?" And I said, "No, just haircut." And he didn't. Bat an eye.
And Lucy Salani, an Italian trans woman who ended up in Dachau after deserting the German army.
È solo che c'è una guardia che prende un pezzo di pane bianco.
There was a guard who would take a piece of white bread, cut off a slice, remove the crust, and put the butter on, right in front of us, we who were so hungry. Then he would take the crust of bread and toss it next to him. One guy, I think he was Polish, he got up from his work and threw himself at the crusts and put them in his mouth. The guard was holding his bread knife. Luckily, the guy turned, or he would have been gutted. Instead, the guard stabbed him in his butt cheek. So much blood, and the guard started laughing. The cut got infected, but the guy still had to come to work.
The stories you'll hear this season are shocking and upsetting. But we owe it to the people who had the courage to share them, to bear witness to their suffering, their fortitude, their survival, and their will to live on. And to really listen as we see the rise of anti-LGBTQ activism, anti-Semitism, and hatred here at home. This special series on the experiences of LGBTQ people during the rise of the Nazi regime, World War II, and the Holocaust is a production of Making Gay History in partnership with the Fortunoff Video Archive for Holocaust Testimonies at Yale University. It's produced by Inga Detaya, Nahani Rouse, and me, Eric Marcus. It's made possible thanks to the ongoing support of the Jonathan Logan Family Foundation, the Calamus Foundation, and Christopher Street Financial. Additional funding for this season was provided by the Reuben and Gloria Feldman Family Educational Institute, the Ziegler Family Fund, David Carollo, Eric Lee, and Ty Ashford and Nicholas Jitkoff. We're also grateful for the generous contributions of Mary Cadigan and Lee Wilson, Kathy Dancer, Michael Longacre, the Marcus Family Foundation, Rob Marchand, Christine and Brian White, the Embry Family Foundation, Rick Hoffman, and Lisa Malakowski, who made a donation in support of this series in honor of our fellow Vassar grad, the late legendary activist, Urvashi Vad. Many thanks to Là-Bas Si J'y Suis for the Pierre Seel clip, to the Jeff and Toby Her Oral History Archive at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. for the Frida Bellinfante footage, and to Blue Mirror, Kimerafilm, and True Colors for the Lucy Salani footage. I'm Eric Marcus. Until next time.